Good morning, participants. Good morning, staff of the UNISA. You're welcome to our discussion today on theory borrowing in research writing. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you for our discussion this morning. And I hope that our discussion will be meaningful and help in our research to improve what we have done and what we are still doing. So we are all welcome. The presentation will run like this. Look at theories in research and why we use theories. We looked at home-based theories and borrowed theories. Then theory borrowing, what we mean by theory borrowing. And then we ask ourselves the question, do we need to borrow theories? These are issues we'll look at. Then when do we borrow theories? Is theory borrowing specific to any discipline or is it a general issue? Then theory use, how do we use theory and wrong use of theories in our research? And then we'll conclude. So these are some of the issues we're going to look at this morning as concerns theory borrowing in research. First of all, we looked at what research. Sorry, there's a mic on there. Research follows a systematic process of inquiry, as we all know. And before you start a research process, there must be a problem you want to investigate. You can't just start writing without looking at a problem you want to solve at the end of that research. So that is why for you to start your research writing, you have to read literature, know which angle you're going to look at, the problem you have identified. Then you look at literature, know whether there are people that have done something on that area that will help you. So once you ascertain the problem you want to investigate, then you now follow the research process. You need to do the introduction to tell your readers what you intend to do. Then the literature review, looking at what other researchers, other writers have said in that area. And then you look at the theory, then methodology, and then before you collect your data. So these are all the processes that will help you in your research process. And you need to follow them systematically so that you'll be able to achieve a good result at the end of your research. So like I said, theories and methodology, they are the two pillars of research. And theories contribute to the production of informative knowledge, as stated by Globe 2020. So our main concern in this presentation is on theories. They are used to explain research variables and social realities. When we have a problem, when we have a research to write, we have our topic, and then the problem we want to investigate. And inside it, there are some variables that we need to look at that we manipulate to see their effect in solving that problem. So these are the main issue then that will enable us to know the theory that we borrow, that will help us in achieving our aims. So this implies that for any discipline, it is important to use theory in research, irrespective of the discipline origin of the theory. Since we know that we need theory in our research, and it's important for us to achieve our research objectives, it then means that we need to get theory. Even if the ones we have in our disciplines, like we'll see later on, they are not relevant, we can go extra mile to borrow from other disciplines. So we say, why do we use theories? There are some authors, their views on why we use theories, what theories can do in our research writing. That we use theories because they are the cornerstone for generating research problems and hypotheses. It is from the theory, from the constructs that we get from the theory, that will help us informing our research problems and also inform our hypotheses. And you also go, as you go along, even in your data collection and analysis and discussion, you also make reference to those theories, those constructs you have borrowed from the theory, to make sure whether they really have any effect on the problem we are investigating. So theories act as lens for focusing and magnifying certain things and filtering out those presumed to be noise. And it's also necessary in explaining the relationship among concepts. So these are all the benefits or relevance of theories in our research writing. There are a lot of them. So many authors, they have their different views concerning theories, and it's important in our research writing. So they are important for relatively new interdisciplinary fields which do not have a long history of theory construction and testing. Actually, if you look at that statement, one may ask, what of old disciplines? Don't they use theory? They do use theories, both those home-based and those they borrowed. So theory is important in our research writing, and we have to make good use of the theories when we are writing our research. We don't just get theories and explain them and leave them without making good use of them in our research. No, we need to make use of the theories and the theories that are relevant to what we are writing, not just any theory you pick along the line. So for the fact that the theories that are important in our research, it makes it imperative to borrow theories in the absence of home-based theories. So we'll look at theory borrowing. What do we mean when we say we want to borrow theory? It involves adapting relevant theories from another discipline to be used to explain variables in the study to shape the research process. These are the views of Ukwoma and Ngulube 2021. By adapting relevant theories, this you watch the keywords, relevant theories. The theory must be relevant to your study. You don't just pick any theory, like I said earlier on, maybe because your discipline said you must use theory, or you've read through some research works where they use theory. You said, okay, I must use theory. No, it must be relevant. Then you must use it to explain research variables in your study. That will now help to shape the research process. It is necessary that borrowing process become explicit, purposive, and conscious. This can be accomplished only if the researcher understands the important philosophical issues at stake. When you understand your research, and that is why it's important to do a wide literature search, read through literature. Don't just pick a topic and you start writing. You need to consult other sources. Look at what other people have done in that area. Then from there, that will now help you, give you a clue of what to do. So that using that idea, having that at the back of your mind, how those topics have been treated before, the areas they covered, that will now help you inform your own study, where you now move forward in order to achieve your objective. So if you get a topic, try and do a literature search, read what others have done, and from there you can start your own work. Theory borrowing is an inevitable and integral facet of theory development in all disciplines. You find out that most times when you borrow theory from your own work, from your own concepts, you can modify that theory. You can move along to add to that theory from your own study, so that others can also cite you when they write in such subject areas. So that is the reason why theory borrowing is encouraged, so that some disciplines can benefit from each discipline can benefit from each other. The context, the situation in one discipline, you can apply it in another discipline and see whether there will be a difference or will still be the same finding or the same results you get at the end of it. So when we borrow theories from other disciplines, although we have our home-based theories, home-based theories here means those theories that emanate from our disciplines. Let's take, for instance, the technology acceptance model. It's from the home-based discipline is information system, but it can be used in any discipline. The learning theory from education, it can be used in education, it can be used in social science, even in critical theory. So they have their own base disciplines from where they emanate from. So they can be used outside that disciplines. But when you use it in that discipline, like technology acceptance model, being used in a discipline of information system, you regard it as home-based theory. Even in library and information science, there is what we call reference theory. It's also a home-based theory in that particular discipline. So it can be used in that information science by the students in that area. But another student from another discipline can decide to adopt that theory depending on the subject area and what you're writing on. That is what necessitates whether you use your home-based theory or you borrow theories outside. You don't just say because there is no theory in my discipline, I won't use theory. No. That is why you need to read wide, know other theories from other disciplines that will help you in the absence of home-based theory in your research. So home-based theories are theories that emanate from a particular discipline. We have said that. Then borrowed theories are those theories developed in other disciplines and imported for use in another discipline based on the subject area of the research. So we are free to move to other disciplines to borrow theories and use them in our research. So far we use them properly as we are supposed to use them, not just picking theories, explaining them and dumping them there without any relationship with the variables in our studies, a research question or hypothesis. There must be a link between the theory we are using and our study. So the question now is, do we need to borrow theories? Having explained what home-based theories are, and having explained what home-based theories are, and then borrowed theories. The interdisciplinary nature of research encourages theory borrowing, since theories are necessary in explaining research variables. So we need to borrow theories. Some disciplines are still evolving, and they depend on borrowing theories from other disciplines. It can take place as new development from established fields to creep into a field. Then think of developments in technology and how it affects the field and how it affects other fields. Let's take, for instance, subject this ODEL studies in ODEL. You find out that open and distant learning will operate in an e-learning platform. It's facilitated by using technology. And you know, some of these technology, they are new to some students. They are not, many of these learning platforms, many of them are not familiar with them. Assuming you want to do a study, you want to look at the maybe perception of students towards using a particular learning platform, their ease of acceptance, their flexibility in using that platform, and maybe other variables, other issues surrounding the use of technology in learning. What you need to look at is what theory can you use that will help you to achieve this objective. You may need theories from information systems. You may also need theories from education. So look at that, how you can use maybe more than one theories in your research studies is allowed, but you have to use them properly. So when and where do we borrow theories? A researcher should know when he should borrow a theory, when there is absence of discipline or home-based theory relevant to your study. In that situation, you are left with the option of adapting a relevant theory from another discipline and use it in your study. When it is relevant and it can help to explain the variables of your studies, that is when you borrow a theory. Like I said, when I defined theory borrowing, it must be relevant to your study. Don't just take any theory for the sake of it. That relevance is important. Then is there, maybe are we restricted to borrow theory from any discipline? Where can we borrow? We can borrow from any discipline, depending on your subject area and the variables of your study. So you're free to borrow theory from any discipline in as much as the theory is relevant to your study. You're not restricted to any particular discipline. Maybe let's say those in education, they will only borrow from those in social science, or social science only from information system, or their vice versa. No. The important thing is the relevance of the theory to your study, and also helping you to explain the research variables and to answer your research questions. Once the theory is able to do this for you, you're free to borrow the theory irrespective of the discipline. Then how do we borrow theories? When we adapt theory from its discipline origin, we need to explain what the theory means. Maybe we can go further to explain who propounded the theory and when it's propounded, depending on our guide. We can decide to adopt the whole theory, and also depending on what we're doing, we can adopt maybe few concepts from the theory. All depends on the variables of your study. That is what will guide you. Then you identify the variables that you need to test in your work. That is what will guide you to know whether you're taking the full constructs of variables in that story, or you're just picking out few that are relevant to your work. Then the theory should inform your research questions or hypotheses and data analysis. There must be that link. Another thing is that you can use more than one theory in a research. You can decide to borrow constructs from the theories, maybe 2 or 3 theories, combine them, maybe come up with your own research model or conceptual framework as you want to do. But you can also decide to adapt one theory, use the whole concepts in your research work. You can also adapt one theory, maybe take few concepts from the variables constructs from the theory, and then apply it in your work. All depends on the variables of your study. That is what will guide you in when you're doing this. Using borrowed or home theory. What do we mean by when we say we use a theory? It means that the researcher identified the theory or theories to be used, explain them in the test, and incorporate them in answering the research questions. Just mentioning them in the test or table of content does not guarantee its use. Most researchers in most studies we looked at, they fall prey to this. You find out that a researcher will get a theory, explain the theory very well in the test, but at the end of the day, when you go through the work, the researcher did not make use of it, either informing the research question or mention it anywhere else, maybe informing the questionnaire or even data analysis is just explained in the work, just like that. And you now begin to ask, what's the relevance? Why putting this theory? Is it just to maybe add to the number of pages you have written, or add to the number of chapters you have in your work? You must have need for that theory, why you want to use that theory, and you make good use of it. Other authors identify theory use as that you have to state the constructs of the theory, discuss some authors that have used the theory, and the link between the theory and the variables in the research question. That is when you will now regard it that you have used that theory in your research work. When you state the constructs of the theory, discuss some authors, that's relevant literatures that have used that theory in the previous studies. You need to cite them, maybe whether they agree with the theory or they have some, maybe they mention some short comments as regards to that theory. When you read such things, when you get such information, that will also help you know how you apply that theory in your own work, and then you have your own view, whether you agree with their own view or you have a different view towards that statement. Then when you're done with that, It will also help you to form your research question or hypothesis, as the case may be. Wrong use of theory. Some researchers explain theories in their work without using them to explain any variable or answer any research question or hypothesis. It's a wrong use of theory. You didn't use that theory at all. When you just explain a theory in a work without using it to explain any variable in your study, to answer any research question or form any research question or hypothesis, your theory should inform your research questions or hypothesis. That is when you know that if you use that theory. In some cases, the researcher lists two or more theories without any reference to them in the research work. Like a study we did recently on looking at conceptual and theoretical framework. You find out that there are some works, articles, you open them, you have 3 or 4 theories properly explained in the work. But when you read through the work, the researcher didn't make use of it at all in the work, in the article. Most times they will mention the theories maybe in the introduction, but they didn't really use it. So it's not a proper use of theory. We have to use our theories. If we want to use theory, we have to use it with our research work. Make sure we use it to explain our research variables, to form our research questions or hypotheses, and also answer them so that at the end of the day, you'll be able to bring out the theoretical significance of your study. Is theory borrowing specific to any discipline? It is not specific to any discipline, if I would say. It's prevalent in many disciplines. Many disciplines borrow theories from other disciplines. In the absence of home-based theories relevant to the study, a researcher borrows theory from another discipline. A discipline may have theories, but a researcher may not find them relevant to the study and will not help in achieving the research objectives. That is another issue. When there are theories in your discipline, but you find out that those theories will not help you to achieve your research objective, they are not relevant in explaining your research variables. You can't say that because there are theories in my discipline, I must stick to that. No, you have to borrow theories from other disciplines so far it's relevant to your study. So that is why theory borrowing is not specific to any discipline. You can borrow from any discipline. You can use the theories in the M&S from your own discipline. The watchword there is relevance to your study and helping you to explain your research variables or research objectives. Another thing that will determine where you borrow theory from is the subject area. Your subject area you're researching into. Like I mentioned before, the use of technology in online learning. You find out that such study, maybe perception of students' perception or adaptation to new learning platform. You find out that such study involves use of technology and also looking at the individual is learning adaptation to that learning platform, how the individual reacts, how the student reacts to that learning platform. So in that case, that will now inform you which discipline you borrow theory from because the subject area now informs you that there is use of technology there, the ease to which students will adapt to that technology in learning, and also what will be their reaction, how they react to that learning environment. So that will now guide you that you need theory maybe from information system, you may need theory from maybe learning theory or other theories that will help you explain your variables in the study. So the subject area of the study has an influence on the discipline the theory is borrowed from. The constructs or variables of the study the researcher wish to test will also guide in the choice of the theory to be used in the study. That's another guide that will help you to use to know the theory you want to borrow The constructs in your study, the variables of the study you're carrying out will also help you to know the theory that will really help you to achieve your research objective. An example here is a study. You will get a link to this article. I forwarded it to Mr. Matila. If you read, I will advise that you read through it. It will really help you in forming your own research questions and also explaining your research variables. This is a theory. This is a work on a modification of two models for determining cloud computing adoption for web-based services in an academic library. We looked at the adoption of cloud computing, web-based services in a library. How do they perceive the ease of using this technology? Is it easy for them to use? What are the challenges? What of the maintenance? What factors would they look at to enable them adopt this particular technology in their services? So these are the constructs that we want to test, that we tested in that study. Sorry. We looked at the facilitating condition, the perceived benefits of this particular service in that library, then user friendliness, the ease of use of that particular technology, then the security, the perceived security, ease of maintenance, perceived flexibility, and how reliable with this particular system, with this particular technology be. Is it reliable? Then increase performance. So these are our constructs in that particular study. And with these constructs, we formed our hypothesis that guided our study. So if you make out time to read that one, you find out that even in our research questions, we also make use of these constructs. And we use we use the technology acceptance module and then the unified theory of acceptance and use of technology. These are the two we use. And from the two of them, if you look at the two, like I presented it here, you find out that we borrowed some constructs from the two of them. We didn't take all, but we borrowed the ones that we need, that are relevant for our study, that were used in explaining those constructs we identified in our work. So using them, we now came up with this research model that really helped us to form our research hypothesis and also our questionnaire that we distributed. And then we used it in also explaining our data analysis, the data we collected. We used it there. So I will encourage you, maybe download, get the link and read through the article. Maybe that will really guide you when you're doing your own research work, when you're using your own theory, so that you know how you can get your constructs and link it with those of the theory you're using and explain it further. So this is another example of some of the theories used in library and information science in thesis and dissertation in Nigeria and South Africa. Because we try to look at theory used in some disciplines. We looked at information science. We also looked at ODEL. What theories do they use? And which subject areas do they borrow theories from? You find out that information science, these are some of the theories that they use most in their study, in their thesis and dissertation. So there are a lot of them. There are others that they use. And one thing we discovered that in spite that there are so many theories, home-based theories in this discipline, they use more of borrowed theories from other disciplines. The theories from their home-based theories, they were not overused. So that is to tell you that the subject area of your research informs you of the theory to use and where to borrow the theory from. So it's not a matter of maybe the theories in your discipline is being overused. Maybe you need another theory from another discipline. No, it doesn't work that way. you need to be guided by your research, by your subjects, your research variables that you want to test. These are the things that will guide you. So this also some of the theories they use and the frequency. So you find out that many of them they're used by maybe 5 theses, 4 theses, and unified theory of acceptance and use of technology, mostly used, followed by diffusion of innovation theory. And the reason may be because of maybe use of technology in the service delivery and information science. You know, they deal mostly with users, their clients, and most times they try to employ technology in their service delivery. And so when it happens, maybe the researchers now want to test out how to improve this service delivery or the challenges are confronting the use of this technology in effective service delivery in some of these institutions. So I think that may be the reason why you have some of these theories being used more than others. So also this the case of a study on theories mostly used in ODER literature. The theory of transactional distance, mostly used, followed by the technology acceptance model and all the other theories, learning theories and others. So you find out that, like I said before, OD, open and distance learning, has to do with technology, the distance between the students and the instructor or the teacher. There is a distance there. How do you handle such situations? How do you test students' perception or adaptation to these technologies in their learning? So these are some of the reasons that may inform your researchers to use these theories, maybe to test out some variables in their study they're carrying out. So subject area of your research is an important factor when you're borrowing theory and the variables in your study, because from the subject area of your research, you'll be able to identify the variables you are testing out. And then you now go for the theory that will help you to achieve your research objective. So there are some authors that are in support of theory borrowing, and some see it as a maybe mark of weakness in a discipline to borrow a theory. But some are still of the opinion, like Ochola and Leroy, they're of the opinion that theory borrowing from across disciplines does not make it a lesser science than those the theoretical framework of which there is used for the research. That is, that a discipline or a researcher from one discipline borrow theories from another discipline. It does not make the discipline maybe to be lesser science or maybe it's not strong or whatever. No, it is not. Which means they encourage theory borrowing. Because if you look at it these days, we're talking of interdisciplinary research. We're talking of research collaboration with other disciplines to test out one situation, what is the effect of it in another environment or in another discipline. So that way it will help encourage a research collaboration and will also expand knowledge. But if you restrict yourself only to a particular discipline, you find out that that collaboration, that expansion will not be there. Other researchers also stated that researchers need to be aware of the role of theory in research, but disagree with the notion that using theories from other disciplines is a mark of weakness in a discipline. That is, it's not. You should understand the role of theory in research. Once you understand the role of theory in your research, you find out that it's not a mark of weakness in any discipline. No. Also, there's also a view here that says that the mark of research seriousness, that theory is a mark of research seriousness and respectability. That's their own view. Though there may be believers and skeptics in theory borrowing, they will not prevent disciplines from borrowing theory. That's despite the views of some researchers concerning theory use or theory borrowing from other disciplines. That will not undermine the use of theory and other disciplines borrowing theory, or researchers borrowing theory from other disciplines. There is need to borrow theory from other disciplines. But one thing you need to know is that you need to use the theory properly in your research. You have to employ it in explaining your research variables so that it will help you to form your research questions or hypotheses and also help in your data analysis. So the caution I want to sound here is that we shouldn't use theories because others are using theories. Other studies use theories. No. Or that it is expected as a guide or the outline in a thesis and dissertation that a study should have a theory. And when we looked at that study, maybe there's when we look at our study, we say we must infuse theory there, whether it's relevant to our study or it's not relevant. No. We should look at the study and look at the theory and know the benefits or the relevance of that theory to our study. And then we can use it and use it properly. Or in a situation we want to impress our reviewers in our research articles, we want to input add theory. Though there are some articles, maybe when you write and send to them, they want to find out the theoretical background. They want you to maybe add theory. If such theory is not relevant in that work, I don't think there's need to for you to infuse or force it into the work. Or maybe to show that our work is better than others. No. We need to make good use of our theories and explain our research variables so that at the end of our research, we now see the relevance of that theory in our research work and we also bring out the theoretical significance in our work. So, in conclusion, I would like to conclude with this Chinese proverb that says that teachers open the door, but you must enter by yourself. Actually, we've done a little bit explanation and show some example illustrations of theory used in some research work and in some disciplines. It's now left for us as students, as researchers, to read more, to empower ourselves, equip ourselves more with more literature on this theory use, so that when we write our own research, we know when we used our theories properly, and then whether that theory is relevant to our work. So that if it's not relevant to our work, we better do away with the theory. But if it's relevant to our work, we do well to use them and use them properly in our explaining our research variables and answering and then forming our research questions. So that is all that's left for us. We shouldn't just relax and know. We have to do more and help ourselves and know. Even if we come across a study that used theory, we'll now tell ourselves that that researcher used that theory properly or the researcher did not. So that will now help us to know what we do in our own situation so that we won't fall prey of what the mistake other people made and we also follow suit and also make the same mistake. No, we shouldn't do that. So these are some of the references that we used in this work. I'll still leave it, you have it in the presentation so that you can read further on theory borrowing. It's very nice to borrow theories from our other disciplines and it will help us in improving in our own research. Most times we can also come up with models or improve on the theory we also borrowed so that others can also cite us when they use such theories. They can also make reference to our work. So having said that, I'll say thank you for listening and I expect to have your questions, comments and reactions so as to explain more areas that you didn't get properly during the explanation. Thank you.